I need a beer. Please excuse the background noise. There's a bunch of fucktards outside power washing our roofs of our apartments. So hopefully the noise contamination isn't so bad. If it is, afterwards I may just can this whole video and pretend this movie doesn't even exist. Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to our Tremors re-review series. The final video in this series, and we're ending it with a whimper. Today, me and good old Trevor boy.
Howdy, everybody.
We'll be talking about 2018's Tremors, A Cold Day in Hell.
Hey, real quick, for the audience, the damnedest thing happened. Even though this review is going to be mostly cons, I kind of like this movie on the last watch. So, yeah. Miracles do happen once in a while. If you believe.
I don't want to. There's not much to say in terms of personal history.
Yeah, go ahead. It's not going to be very long. Go ahead.
So, of course, when I found out that a sixth Tremors movie was going to be made, of course I was excited. And I eagerly awaited its release May 1st, 2018. So I went out and I bought it from my local FYE at my mall. I invited my brother over for a movie night and pizza, and we sat down. We watched Tremors, A Cold Day in Hell. And this is only the second time that I've ever watched this movie. I remember kind of liking it the first time. Then, of course, I did my review. Then it just kind of simmered with me for a while. And, of course, I would talk to Trev, and I found my kinship in him through our dislike of this movie. And then finally, when it came down to this review series, this was the only Tremors movie that I was not looking for. Well, I was looking forward to watching it, but I also wasn't. I was because I was hoping maybe I'll like it a little bit more, but I was also afraid to because, well, what if I like it even less? Yeah, miracles do happen. I liked it even less.
Okay, my history isn't much more than that. Tremors 5 was great. I heard they were doing another one. It's like, yes, Tremors is back. Then I heard the plot, and I was like, this is intriguing. Not only are they taking it to Arctic environment, in theory, as we're going to find out, they also were teasing the fact that maybe Bert was going to be in jeopardy. And I thought, okay, this sounds. So it comes out. It's the first. Well, it's not the first one I saw on Netflix because I saw the fifth one on there. But then I watched this one on Netflix as well, and it was over. And I said to myself, "That's the first one I haven't liked after watching it." But I've seen it now 5 times. 5 times.
I've seen only twice.
Twice, yeah. So I think maybe 5th time's the charm because it's starting to grow on me like a fungus, I guess. But I don't know. There's still a lot of problems that we're going to get into, but it's the damnedest thing. It's like, okay, it is what it is. Bad. Oh, well. Yes, that's my history.
So the plot of this movie is very simple. In Canada's Nunavut Territory, a team of young researchers collecting ice core samples of glaciers are killed by a graboid. After brushing off a tax agent, Burt Gummer and his son, Travis Welker, are asked by Dr. Rita Sims and young graboid hunter Valerie McKee to investigate. Their plane is attacked by an ass blaster, but Burt and Travis make it to the facility. They learn that Arctic heat conditions have made the area prime for graboids. Burt suspects their research neighbors at DARPA are developing bioweapons out of the grass. When an ass blaster attacks the facility, Burt rescues a researcher but experiences an episode and collapses. He learns that he has been infected by a parasite based on graboid venom from when he was inside one years earlier, and that they need to extract the antibodies from a live one to save him. As graboids continue to kill off researchers and staff, several members of the group try to make their way from the lab to the generator area where the pilot Mac is repairing the plane. And the facility's manager Swackhammer has created a makeshift underground electric fence. Others head for the communications tower and to turn off a drill that has automatically activated. With his own research team attacked, Agent Cutts of DARPA joins Burt's group, revealing that his team was more interested in extracting the melted water and not fashioning bioweapons. He agrees to Burt and Travis's conditions that the government remove the tax liens from their place in perfection and exempt them from paying property taxes henceforth. The group eventually used a storage container to trap one of the graboids, spearing it from the side to hold it in place and cutting off its front tentacles, which they don't even actually do. Travis reaches in the graboid's mouth with a syringe and draws venom from its internal gland sac, which is then used to save Burt. Cutts gives the Gummers the paperwork freeing them from taxes. Then they blow up the last graboid before Cutts gets any ideas of really using it as a bioweapon. And that's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. Only 2 paragraphs, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Trev.
Okay, yeah. I think there are times where the script in this movie is trying really hard. And there's some stuff almost seems like a good idea, but it doesn't really make a landing. It's like the plane, no pun intended, because there's a plane in this movie, is trying to come into land, and it's very rickety, and it ends up crashing anyway. So should we just jump into our stuff?
So my thoughts on this movie's storyline: what the hell does this even add to the entire Tremors franchise? I'll tell you, nothing.
It's like a filler episode of the show.
Yeah, this really feels like either a Stepping Stones movie, as Cody Leach calls Phantasm 4, or it's like, yeah, it's just a filler movie. Like, they're riding so hard on the high of Tremors 5, and they thought that could carry over into this movie, so they just shipped this movie out and said, here, call it good. And it's not. It's just, this feels like so, in every single way, this feels like such a downgrade from Part 5. It just like makes you wonder, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Like, how could you think this was a good direction to go in? I theorize there may have been some studio meddling in this case, because if Don Michael Paul is on board with giving us Tremors 5, I don't see how he could have been okay with this movie. So I really theorize there may have... Huh?
Finish up and I'll tell you.
I just theorized there was some studio meddling in this case, just to make it as like bare bones a Tremors movie as possible. And in my opinion, this movie just does not, it doesn't land on any of its bases. It doesn't entertain. It doesn't give Tremors fans what they want. It fails.
So I will agree that it does feel like it's a stepping stone to arguably get English.
Hang on a sec.
It's possible.
Now I have 11 cons.
So, like I said, it has that stepping stone quality. So it has middle chapter syndrome, I guess you'd say, of these recent movies. I think possibly there's a different producer for this movie, a guy named Mike Elliott. The producer for the last movie was Ogden Gavonsky, I think is how you say his name, and he seemed very passionate about the material. I have no idea what Mike Elliott felt about Tremors, so maybe he used to be a different factor here. The screenplay is also written by John Welpley, who was writer for 3 and 5. I think you can tell which element he carries over from those two movies, but he seemed to struggle with what he was trying to do here. I think I'm going to have to read the critical reception whenever we're done with the review at the very end, because it will probably wrap it up. It's not a very long section, but it seems to reflect your thoughts.
Tremors: A Cold Day in Hell received mixed reviews. Tim Jansen of the Sci-Fi Movie page gave the film 2 out of 5 stars, saying, while none of the Tremors sequels nor the one prequel have ever been able to hold a candle to the original, A Cold Day in Hell is definitely one to miss. This sleep-inducing borefest cannot even be saved by Bert's over-the-top arrogance and crankiness. Gavin Al-Asif for the Houston Chronicle called the film so bad it's nearly unwatchable, and said the film as if it were made by people who absolutely loathe Tremors and want to insult the fans as much as possible. Conversely, Fred Topel of Bloody Disgusting gave the film a more positive 3.5 out of 5, noting that the Arctic setting was a fun change of setting without compromising the monster attacks. He also praised the performances of the cast, especially Gross and Money.
Yeah, so I guess we didn't save it for the end, because that kind of really says it in a nutshell, even though we have our own unique thoughts. Do you want to just jump into it, Nick?
The one that I definitely agree with the most is
the middle one, probably.
No, the first one for me. I don't think it's nearly unwatchable, but it does kind of feel like it was made by people who don't like Tremors and just were stuck with working on a Tremors movie, so they just gave us this and said, okay, I'm done, I want out.
So it had to not be Don Michael Paul, because he came back for 7. So I'm thinking, I don't know this for sure, I'm thinking it might be the new producer guy. I don't know. Time will tell us.
Go ahead, Trev.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, not very many pros here, but they did stick out to me these last couple of viewings. Only 3. Number 1, this is a very subtle reference. You have to really be listening to it, and the subtitles help if you have them on. The opening scene in which 3 drillers that are working for the base get attacked, there's a reference to the Thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, the Swedish Norwegian reference. That was quite memorable with Matt. Of course, at the same time, I started thinking, I wish this was as good as the Thing, but you know. All right, pro number 2 is I actually think the graboid CGI in this movie is pretty impressive. There's some pretty neat shots of them coming out of the ground, ramming vehicles, jumping up and attacking people. The tentacles are also pretty neat, although hold on, yeah, I need to save that for one of my cons. Yeah, but the Graboid CGI is pretty good, in my opinion. Some neat shots. Really, they were impressed with it because they used it in that montage that is on the Shrieker Island Blu-ray for a tribute to the series. And I'm like, okay, those are some cool shots. And pro number 3, and the last one, there is a little bit of humor in this movie that did make me chuckle a bit. Of course, sadly, it's followed immediately after by something that overstays its welcome. Bert has some lines in here that are pretty funny. The one I'm thinking of in particular is whenever he tries to goad one of the researchers to pissing off the tower in order to distract the Graboid. I did like a couple of his lines. Free Willy and let the big dog eat. And then the one that really made me chuckle is get out that disco stick and let it dance or something like that.
That was probably the only scene in this movie that made me laugh.
Yes, exactly. Same with me. And then, unfortunately, it's just like they overdo it with this stuff in this one. It's just like, why? It's like somebody watched the opening scene of Tremors and thought, you know what, that Val guy pissing off a cliff, that's the most hilarious thing. That's what it seemed like they thought. Oh, and I also like a couple of Bert's quotes earlier on whenever he's trying to motivate Dr. Feretzi in order to throw some balls. You know, he says, my balls are in the Guinness Book of Balls. That's probably the most memorable line from this movie, in my opinion. My balls are made of steel. And then Feretzi repeats it with his accent. My balls are made of steel.
Is he German?
I think so. I think that's what they were implying. There's a few of the cast members who have a very obvious South African accent. Like that one lady who gets pulled out a window, which the Graboid looks good, but her acting is terrible in that scene. She has this blank expression on her face, like this is like South actors. She has a very noticeable South African accent, which this movie was filmed in South Africa. So.
Yeah, that factors into one of my problems.
Yeah, all right, Nick, go ahead with your few pros as well.
So, originally I whittled it down to 4, but I actually now do have 5, though one of them is kind of minor, so I'll get this one out of the way. Pro number 1 is I liked Freeze's death. I know he's named Feretzi, but I'm just going to call him Freeze, just because I absolutely hated this dude. I mainly just liked it because it was a nice retribution for him acting like a pussy asshole. Because he's the type, he's a fucking weasel, a total fucking weasel. The entire movie, he's just saying, "Oh, you need to kill the Graboids. I'm too pretty and I'm too gay for this area. I need to get out of here." And then he decides to be such a fucking piece of garbage and pull along his fucking stupid ass rolling bag and get into the only working truck that they have, and also take the only working satellite phone that they have and just try to run away and strand everybody with the Graboids. And how he gets killed is very, very, very entertaining. Just the Graboid comes out and he launches itself like a fucking brick shit house and totally wrecks this truck shit, knocks Freeze out the truck, and they just tear him to pieces off screen. But it was very, very satisfying. Oh, thank God in heaven they just shut it off. Better make the best of it. Huh?
It's a miracle, everybody.
Pro number 2, I liked the Graboid shipping container trap. I thought that was a really, really cool idea, and I thought that was a very, very clever way on how they got that accomplished. And also, I think now they've been talking about wanting to capture a Graboid for almost the entire series, and it only took 6 movies, but they finally did it, managed to figure out a way to capture a live Graboid. And I like that they stuck in rebar at the very beginning, so when the Graboid comes out, it can't close its mouth at all, so it's pretty much just sitting there helpless. And this will lead me into pro number 3, is that the special effects in this movie are pretty damn solid. The few explosions that we have are pretty decent, like the one graboid that gets blown up from the electric fence. All you just see, it's kind of reminiscent of Tremors 2, this giant geyser of orange blood and dirt and mud. That's pretty entertaining. And the practical graboid that they have sticking out of the shipping container, I think it looks really, really, really good. It's very well detailed. It looks gooey. It looks slimy. It looks like the inside of a graboid's mouth. And the CGI in this movie, this was the biggest positive that stuck out to me. The CGI models, I think, look very, very, very good. They don't look cartoony. They almost don't look like CG at all. The CGI models, I think, are very, very, very convincing. The tentacles look really good. The ass blasters look for the most part really good. Whenever they're flying, it's pretty obvious that they're a CG model on a green screen. But when they're like up close and personal, the CGI models I think are very detailed and they blend well with the background. And the graboids, their CGI models look fantastic. They're very well animated. They look exactly like how a graboid would look. They just look really, really solid. And I don't know how big this movie's budget was, but it seems like they spent it well on the CGI for this movie, even though they don't see them very, very much. But what we do see looks really, really good. Pro number 4 is the monster action in this movie is overall is pretty decent. This is probably like the least fun for the whole series, but what we do have is fairly entertaining. There's a couple good chase scenes. There's a couple good monster fights. There's a couple good shootouts. Yeah, the monster action is not probably one of my favorite scenes. And also, this is something that stuck out to me. This movie kind of hates women. Because the first 3 kills in this movie are all females, and they're killed so brutally. The first one gets totally swallowed up at the very beginning of the movie. The second one gets torn to pieces in a hot spring after she steps on some graboid eggs. And the third one this is the one that Trev was talking about, which the CGI here looks really, really, really good. But she gets grabbed onto her shoulder, her neck, and her...
In the pussy.
Yeah. She gets bit She gets bit in her crotch and yanked out of a building into a graboid's mouth. So I'm like, oh my God, does this movie have like a hate boner against women?
Hey, it was the Donald Trump graboid. That's what I'm going to call that one, Donald.
Cool.
No, I'll probably forget about it after this review.
But yeah, the monster action is fairly entertaining. Again, like least fun, but it's decent for what it is. And my final pro is there was a couple moments in this movie that did make me laugh. The piss humor, it overstays its welcome, but the first couple lines regarding it are kind of funny. And the biggest scene that made me laugh was when they were trying to attract the graboid to be blown up by the electric fence. Watching Bert with that ground stopper just going, ah! I thought was funny.
That was pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Overall, like the humor is like a big step down from part. Funny because I said that Part 6 was the funniest of the whole series originally, but no, I definitely retract that statement. Part 5 is the funniest. But there were a couple moments here that were funny, just not as much as I remembered.
Yeah.
And that's all she wrote, ladies and gents.
Hey, real quick. I'll go ahead and add a pro number 4 to my list because you convinced me. I had this originally under the graboid CGI, but I do like the action and the gore. It was the graboid gore. It was pretty good. So I'll add that on there. So now I'm up to pro.
And now also I'm going to say I think this is tied with Tremors 3 as the tamest of the whole series.
Yeah.
Wait, did I say 3 was the tamest?
I think you did, yeah.
Yeah, 3 and 6 I think are the most tame. Wait, no, 7 is the most tame. 3, 6, and 7 are the 3 most tame Tremors movies. But yeah, let's get into our cons. Brace yourselves, people. This is going to be a long one.
Yeah, I have 10 cons.
I have 11.
Yeah. All right, so con number 1, and this still bothers me, even though I kind of let it go a little bit. It's still noticeable this time around. Con number 1 is the cold setting isn't delivered upon.
Yeah, my first I listed as bad snow scenes.
Yes.
This movie, okay, so I learned this when we did our ranking video. This movie definitively was not shot anywhere near the Arctic. It was shot in South Africa. And they absolutely fail in trying to showcase that this movie takes place in the Arctic. The opening scene takes place in a desert with a blue filter with bad foreground CGI snow and bad ice cracking CGI. And what they're standing on is clearly sand, not snow.
I feel bad for those Huskies. I'm sure they were very hot.
Yeah, no doubt. And really, so you can kind of let the rest of the movie go. Like, they kind of sort of showcase that it's like a warmer, cold environment. But it's really the beginning where they try to showcase that this takes place in snow, where they just fail. They fail so badly. What really kills it is when that dude, the last dude, goes tumbling down the hill. He's clearly kicking up sand and not snow.
Yeah. A little bit of trivia on this note. The crew had originally intended to shoot in the mountains of Bulgaria, which apparently the effects guys are based in Bulgaria, Cinemotion. But after the country had endured one of its largest blizzards, they opted to return to South Africa. So ironically, it was actual harsh cold conditions that kept them from filming there. But also South Africa is a cheap location to shoot in, so I'm sure that motivated Universal as well.
Sure, that was their primary motivation.
Yeah. So yeah, this still bothers me about the movie. Ultimately, I let it go because the rest of the movie explains that the valley that they're in is experiencing very unique Arctic heat wave conditions. So they do.
Yeah, that's fine, but still, it would have been kind of cool to see what would a graboid do in snow. Like, how would you find a graboid in snow?
Exactly. And also, I mentioned this in the ranking video, but I'll mention it again. 2018 seemed to have a hard-on for climate change movies. There was this. There was Venom, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, and The Predator. They all mentioned climate change in some form or fashion. So that was clearly a theme for sci-fi that year. So yeah, not much to say about that. The cold setting isn't delivered upon. I've gotten to the point where I just let it go, but it's an undeniable flaw of this movie, and probably the biggest one because the movie is literally called A Cold Day in Hell, unless they're trying to tell us this is what experiencing the movie is like. But it's literally called A Cold Day in Hell, and it doesn't really look like a cold day in hell.
Nope.
So there you go. Con number 2 is Bert's a little too angry in this movie.
Yep, con number 2 for me is also Bert. He's an asshole in this movie. He's not even like a funny, kind of like an asshole, but you listen to him and you enjoy watching him because he's 100% right. He's just a grump fuck in this movie. Like, god damn, dude. What is wrong with you? Why are you being such a dick?
I came up with a headcanon. You want to hear?
Sure.
And actually, I'll go ahead, and this is also one of my cons. In fact, well, I'll mention it later. It has to do with perfection. Uh, I get the impression that Bert is kind of becoming worse, like more cranky and whatnot, because he's really truly isolated now. He's pretty much the only person left in perfection, other than Travis, who doesn't stay there all the time apparently. Um, so the way I looked at it this time around was that I think Bert is such a grump fuck because he's realizing that he's losing his connection to humanity, and he's angry about it, but he doesn't want everybody to know. He's just trying to pass it off as I'm a hard ass. And that also comes across in the fact that they really flirt with Bert's mortality in these recent movies. They kind of the seeds in 5 with Travis.
Yeah, very, very minorly. Like they make a couple lines here and there, like, "Hey, I want you to train someone to pass the torch. You're not going to be around forever to hunt these monsters, so you want somebody else who has experience." Which in there, it's understandable because obviously, yeah, Michael Gross has gotten older, and it didn't feel like it was kind of like Terminator Genesis, where they were acknowledging it, but also at the same time they were having a little bit of fun with it. Here, they just beat you over the head with it.
Well, and they're also, I think they were even thinking at this point, what if we kill off Bert? It's like they were kind of flirting with the idea here, but then they backtrack at the last minute.
Yeah, but then they just fucking went no holds barred with it in the next movie.
Yeah, so my canon explanation for why Bert is so pissed off, other than the fact that he's technically ill in this movie, it's just the fact that he's becoming a lot more hardened to keeping contact because it's really just him and perfection now. So, yeah, I'll elaborate on that for what I think about perfection's fate. But anyway, yeah.
So overall, I don't like Bert in this movie. He's really grumpy. He's really angry. He's really annoying, and he's also really arrogant and low key, kind of stupid. And it also feels like the filmmakers were just intentionally depowering him, just to add fake tension to the film, to make the stakes unnecessarily and artificially more high. And for me, it just doesn't work. It just kind of feels like they were handicapping intentionally the main character just to make the movie more interesting. But it doesn't work.
Yeah. All right, speaking of annoying, con number 3 is, Travis bordered on annoying in the last movie, but here he really starts to be annoying. And the problem is that, unlike the last movie, he comes across as dumb. They really lean into the whole womanizing thing about him. Like, whenever they get the Arctic mission, or whenever they're alerted to it, he keeps on asking Bert, or he keeps on telling him to ask her, is she hot? And it's like, why would you do that? For one thing, why would Bert do that? It's like, okay, we get it that Travis is a horn dog, but it just comes off as irritating in this movie. At least to me it did. And also, it seems like there's a bit of a backtrack on his relationship with Bert.
We'll get to that. We will get to that. At least I will.
You would think that they'd be in a more positive place, but it seems like it's just an extension of the first half of Tremors 5.
Mm-hmm.
Even more so. So, yeah, even though Travis actually kind of looked good in the Bert gear, so to speak, he kind of pulled off the look at one point in the movie. Overall, again, I guess that's the thing I can say is it feels like a backtrack. It seems like they're not moving ahead; they're just kind of staying in one spot from the previous movie, which that movie actually moved past itself. So,
yeah, we'll get to that. I don't have anything really to say about Travis. but I have something to say about Bert and Travis's relationship, so we'll save that for later.
I guess I'm lumping those two things together, really. You're probably not going to like this, but it's not too bad. But con number 4, the practical graboid in this movie, I like the inside of it. That was nice. But, and I guess this is justified by the fact that it can't move its mouth all that much. But for me, this practical graboid is probably the least convincing of the series.
It is. I will agree with you there. Yes, it is the least most practical graboid. But I found it to be very surprising because I didn't expect to see it at all. In this entire new 3 movies, I didn't expect to see a full-on practical graboid at all. So I was very pleasantly surprised. Yes, it doesn't look absolutely fantastic, but I think for what it is and for what they were going for, it looks fine.
True. So in that regard, excuse me, I guess you could call it a nitpick, but I still figured that, I should put it on the cons list because it was longer than everything else. But yeah, the idea is a neat idea, like Nick was saying. But there's even one point, I don't know if this was actually supposed to be the bars that are keeping it in place, but it makes like a metallic creaky noise. And I was thinking, was that the mandibles making that noise, or was it the bars?
I think it's the bars, like it's shifting its weight on the inside to try to get out, and the thing is just creaking under its weight. So I think that was the case.
Okay, I got you. Well, in any case, on one hand, I appreciate Cinemotion using the practical graboid. I mean, they use practical grabbers in some slots for 5. But I appreciate using this full-size head because they actually are very pro CGI. It's like it almost borders on they have this like we're doing it better kind of attitude. You can read that into there, so it's nice that they actually added a noticeable practical effect like this.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving right along, con number 5 is most of the cast are, well, I mean, considering our leads are fairly unlikable in this, the rest of the cast isn't all that memorable, or they're even redundant. The one character, I believe the name was Mac, the pilot. She is basically a poor man's version of Jen Bravers from the last movie.
Yes.
It's like,
so that's actually con number 3 for me, is the cast in this movie is not interesting at all.
It seems like they want you to like the Swackhammer character, and he does give one of the graboids a nickname, Sally Soul Smasher. But
yeah, that scene was a little funny, and fucking stupid ass name, Swackhammer. Swackhammer is an okay character. Like, he's the one aside from Bert and well, even then, he's the only one that's like close to being likable, but he's not enough to save the rest of this movie's cast. They're either bland, annoying, useless, bad acting, or cannon fodder.
Well, and that's also the thing is that what's funny is this movie has such a filler episode kind of feel to it, but the cast is a little bit larger than it needs to be.
Yes,
and they're superfluous. That's describes them, or redundant. They don't make an impression.
not at all.
Compared to the last cast, which was also probably a little bit bigger than it needed to be, but they were still better than the guys in this. And sorry to the actors, but I mean, it's not really y'all's fault. It's just whoever crafted the movie. Y'all are just doing your job. So anyway, yeah, the cast is incredibly not that great, and I think it's made more so noticeable by the fact that our leads, who we're supposed to like, are bordering on pretty unlikable. So, con number 6 is that this is fairly derivative, pretty much by the midway point of the original movie. There's several references to the first movie that I noticed.
Yeah, but here, this time around, so hang on, let's see, what am I... Well, Nah, go right ahead. I do agree that there was a lot of references, but it didn't feel like they were loving homages. They feel like just lazy rehashing this time around.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's why at first I was thinking, oh, okay, homage. But the more it went on, I was thinking they're just ripping wholesale from the first movie. I mean, like from the opening scene, whenever the one researcher gets pulled away by a grappler, that's like the construction worker in the first movie.
Yep.
The Valerie character, actually an interesting concept, which it seems like 2018 was the year of, hey, let's explore or suggest that Val McKee had a daughter. Because not only did this movie actually fully explore that, or at least to a degree they did, the canceled pilot for the Kevin Bacon series, actually, he had a daughter in that as well. So I guess one kind of positive thing is that it makes me curious to see the other take on this concept. But it also seems like maybe the one division making these movies and the one division at Universal making that show for the pilot, they were like in competition with each other. Like, okay, it actually kind of reminds me of the Quicksilver situation with X-Men and the MCU. X-Men tried to do it first with their Quicksilver. Well, they did. And then, the MCU had their version. In this case, we probably might not see this second version of a Val McKee daughter. Hopefully, we'll get to see that pilot someday because it's maybe the only thing left that we get to see.
Yep.
Not to be a downer, but it just occurred to me. So yeah, that concept is interesting, but it also is derivative of the first movie. They're like, okay, it's like they're saying, okay, you remember this? This is kind of a further exploration of that. Various other incidents, like I said, when we get to the base, I'm just going to go ahead and say this because it's also another one of my cons. The ass blasters are just plot devices in this movie. The one that attacks at first the plane, it does that just so there's not a way to fly out of the valley. Then the next one shows up and it basically takes down the communications and the internet and whatnot whenever it lands on the roof of the base. And then so really they're just here to be a plot device. After that, it's purely graboids. And as I said with the graboid CGI and everything, I do think they deliver with the graboids. But then you're sitting there watching and thinking, okay, this is basically Tremors 1 trying to be in an Arctic environment, but as we said before, it doesn't convince on that regard, so it's just, again, a repeat of the original. And there, again, to wrap up this point, there were a lot of things I noticed that were from the first movie, but in the end, it's just being derivative of it. So yeah, it ended up being a con for me.
Yep.
I already said the ass blasters are plot devices, so that would be con number 7. Con number 8, and this is elaborating on con number 2. Perfection's fate is kind of sad.
Huh?
Perfection's fate is kind of sad. If you're a fan of the franchise, it's kind of sad to think that, now it's basically just
a quick stop.
Outpost. Yeah. It doesn't have, for one thing, Jodie from Tremors 3, she's moved on and is apparently at a law firm in Reno, according to Travis.
Which that's cool, but where the hell's the rest of Perfection? Like, where's Nancy? Where's Miguel's farm? Where is Travis's bait? Not Travis. Tyler's company. Where is all these familiar locations from Perfection? Now it just kind of seems like all of it was torn away, and all that's left is Chang's Market.
Which, on some degree, is poetic, especially if you consider Tremors 4 and you realize that Chang's Market is the structure that's been there the longest.
Mm-hmm.
This also made me realize that apparently, it's hard to tell whether John Welkley is aware of the show or not, because he makes minor references to it in 5. He wrote Tremors 3 and that set up the series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here again, they have their Mylar ponchos, the heat blankets. More noticeable this time, it's I could probably put that as a pro because I always appreciate something I recognize from a previous movie. Um, but it seems like they took the worst case scenario for something the series suggested because the series brought up frequently seeing they live there given the conditions, and it makes me think that.
Oh, here's another thing. I totally forgot to mention this in Tremors 5 review. Where's El Blanco?
Yeah, exactly. So it makes me think that I'm guessing if you put the pieces together, since El Blanco is an albino, it's possible that he may have eventually died. And he actually did go through some shit during the series that he might have affected him. I don't know. That's just something I thought of. But really, I guess the perfection thing, they took the worst case scenario of things that were suggested in the series that eventually, and sadly, the residents would eventually pack up and leave for
Sadly.
better pasture, so to speak. So it's like they were saying, okay, here's perfection. But then you see it and you're like, oh, this is all it is now. It's basically a market with a gas station.
Yep.
And it's now
so now that these 3 movies have come and went, I think I'm just going to say to myself, El Blanco's dead.
Well, yeah, because that's the only thing you can consider. Because then in 5, we meet Bert at the start, and that's technically perfection. Even though they filmed it in Africa, it still worked because it's a desert location. It's clear that he's not worried about making sure that El Blanco might be in the vicinity or whatnot. So it does seem like he might have died, and that might have motivated Bert to fully go into the survivalist show thing. I don't know, just basically what we're doing here is trying to rationalize all the different pieces of the canon, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of a sad fate for perfection.
Yeah.
All right, so last 2 cons, and one of them I just brought up because I needed to make a note of this, but this is really the last con, the major one. Con number 9 is the designs are reused from the last movie.
Yep, this is the next one for me. This is con number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Rehashing previous designs. This is when it was definitely confirmed for me that, okay, yeah, Universal's not going to go back to the original designs.
Well, what it is that Cinemotion, they tried to use the African angle as like, okay, this is the new thing we're selling the movie on. But it became clear that Cinemotion had their take on these designs that they probably think are maybe a little bit better than the original, unfortunately. So, yeah, it makes sense that Cinemotion's like, yeah, we want to use our designs for any movies that we work on. And that's clearly the case here because unless, of course, again, it's one of those self-rationalizing things where you're doing the work for the movie that it should have done itself. You would say that this first strain of graboids, these ancestors of what became the North American variety, because that's what they say in this movie. But you could say that the African variant is the oldest and most primitive version of the graboids. You could say that if you're trying to rationalize it. But at the end of the day, it's just the new effects company wanting to use their designs. And it's a very noticeable flaw, I should say.
Now, I wouldn't really have so much of an issue with them wanting to use their new designs, but my issue is that they use the exact same model. I say this in my original Tremors 6 review, and I think the ranking video too. To give this more of an Arctic feel, what they could have done, because they clearly reflect that the African graboid design is much more bulky and is much more of a juggernaut because that's a much more harsh terrain. I still say what they should have done with this movie's graboids is kind of make them sort of a middle ground. They're not as bulky as the African design, but they're a little bit larger than the North American design. And I think they should have been much more sleek and sharp. Like their beaks could have been a lot longer and skinnier and a lot more slender, but they're also incredibly sharp so that they can pierce through ice and permafrost in order to tunnel their way. And also, they'll keep the corkscrew maneuver because that makes sense too. Um, also, make their spikes a lot larger and a lot sharper so that they're literally just like a spiked drill going through the ice and dirt and snow. Um, that would have been really cool. But for me, because they reuse the African designs, it just really sticks out like a sore thumb because that design fits Africa, but it doesn't fit a snowy environment. It doesn't fit a cold environment. So for me, it just sticks out like a sore thumb and comes off as being lazy. Same thing goes for the ass blasters. I don't really understand why the ass blasters were in this movie in the first place, other than like what Trev says to just be plot devices, because they don't add any menace or threat to the film. They don't add anything except fake tension and fake stakes. Um, yeah, the rehashing of old designs, to me, it just feels lazy and unimaginative.
Well, and you could also say that they had the ass blasters in there because there is a moment where, whenever they arrive at the base and Bert and Travis are assessing the situation, one of them says ass blasters, and then the researchers laugh. So you were thinking, oh, they wanted to. It also leads into a grunt moment for Bert, where he snaps at all of them. You know, I guess that's another reason to include it, but that's very minor. Um, to elaborate on what Nick said, yeah, what this movie should have done, in conjunction with actually having a convincing goal setting, is that the designs needed to be something unique, because that's really what would probably be left of the franchise, is to explore different variants of the monsters, which is what 5 suggested, and we could have seen that with this. And with 7, it doesn't matter because the graboid eggs could have came from anywhere. They could have been regular graboid eggs or African graboid eggs. But see, with that movie, it doesn't matter. But with this movie, it becomes clear that, yeah, this is just Cinemotion saying this is our new designs for the monsters. Take it or leave it.
And in this case, I'll leave it.
Yeah. All right. And my last one, I kind of added this because I needed to correct something I said yesterday. Con number 10 is the generic music score. I bring this up.
Yeah, I don't remember a single goddamn track of music from this movie whatsoever.
What the music seems to be doing with the Arctic stuff is kind of it's kind of trying to suggest what you would think of a tundra wilderness, but it's kind of hard to define that, like compared to like what you would expect from an island setting or Africa. And I bring this up because I was wrong. Frederick Weidman also did the score for this movie, and sadly, it's nothing to write home about. 5 score, I thought 5 score was better. 7 score was better. I guess the one good thing you could say with these 3 movies is that at least the director and the composer are consistent, aside from Michael Gross.
That too,
so
yeah.
I brought that up. I brought that up mostly just to correct the fact that I was wrong. Frederick did do all 3 of these recent movies, but unfortunately, this middle movie, it's like
he just didn't give a shit.
Right. Yeah. All right, Nick. Any cons that you want to add?
Okay, so I lost track. 1, 2, 3, 4. Con number 5 is the forced bioweapon idea. This is kind of a nitpick, but they suggest possibly using graboids as bioweapons a couple times in this movie, but they just don't really do anything. You can kind of chalk it up as Bert just being the paramilitary paranoid that he is, and it kind of seems like that's what they're going to be setting up, either for a future sequel or just to have that be a subplot in this movie. It's brought up once, and then it's kind of brought up again at the very end, and then they just kind of sweep that under the rug, literally with a bang, in the admittedly kind of funny killing of the last graboid. But here, it just feels forced, and it just feels like they were trying to throw something into this at the very last minute to make it more interesting, and it doesn't work.
I will say that you could suggest that maybe this is delivered upon in 7, but in that movie, it just sounds like a bunch of science gobbledygook that overcomplicates things.
Yes.
Because the graboid in 7 didn't need to have any genetic tampering. They could have just been African graboids, which are more dangerous than American graboids. They could have just been African graboids that were smuggled onto those islands. That's what I would have done, because it's simpler and you don't need to overcomplicate it. I think it almost is Universal kind of riding on the popularity of the Jurassic World movies.
Yeah, I got that sense too.
Because, Jurassic Park kind of popularized in pop culture the whole idea of genetic engineering anyway. And then the World movies obviously resurrected that. So it feels like Universal is trying to ride possibly popularity for those, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what they were thinking, but it just seems to overcomplicate things or be pointless like in this movie.
Yeah. Let's see. Con number 6. While the CGI for the graboids looks really good, I feel like there's just not enough of them seen. They give you the bare amount of screen time for the graboids, and they do their usual, like implying their presence more than showing them. I feel like here that was their main thing. Like that was their crutch. They were just going full bore with the imply their presence rather than show them. And when you have to show them as little as possible. Not much to say about that, but that's just something that really stuck out to me.
That's also a bit of a problem in 7 now that I think about it.
Yeah. It's done better there, but it doesn't come off nearly as bad as here, though.
Yeah.
Con number 7. Oh, God, does this movie look cheap? This looks like an asylum movie.
Hey, but it's cheap in HD. That makes the difference. No, I'm just kidding.
Whoop-de motherfucking do. This is the only Tremors movie I have on Blu-ray.
Oh, I will add on that note that 5 and 7 look gorgeous on Blu-ray. So there's that.
Maybe so. Where the fuck did I shoot that off to?
It's under the couch.
Yeah, this movie straight up looks like fuck what I said about Tremors 3. In comparison, this straight up looks like a made-for-TV sci-fi asylum movie. It looks that cheap and lazy.
Yeah.
Damn.
I think part of the problem is there's lots of close-ups in this movie. There's no really good wide shots to really give you a sense of the surroundings, but that makes sense because you realize filmmakers are kind of trying to trick us.
Yeah.
They're not really
failing.
They're not in Arctic setting, so it's like, okay, we'll give it a blue tint, but
throughout the whole movie, might I add, it's really blue at the very beginning, but then it just kind of looks like a blue version of sepia tone throughout the rest of the movie, and so hang on.
He's got to retrieve it, ladies and gentlemen. He has a heart. He found it.
Okay, so yeah, this movie just looks really, really, really cheap. This is the cheapest of the entire series as far as I'm concerned. Like, wow. I was amazed with this movie at how cheap it looked. What was that, 7 or 8?
think it was 7.
Con number 8 is Bert and Travis's relationship. This has Last Jedi syndrome. One of the biggest things I praise in Star Wars Episode 7 is how well they establish that Finn progresses as a character. He starts out kind of like as the insecure, unsure, hesitant, borderline coward, but then by the end of the movie, he steps up, grows a pair of balls, and decides to be a hero. Throughout the entirety of The Last Jedi, all they do is regress and like it's like his character progression is in remission. They just keep pulling him back and pulling him back throughout the entire movie. Because what is Finn trying to do all throughout The Last Jedi? Run away and far away.
Yeah, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you a little snippet of my insight into The Last Jedi. You could say towards the end, basically with the Benicio del Toro character in that movie, I guess what you could say is that they're trying to cement whether Finn's going to be a resistance fighter or not. And by the end, whenever he defeats, by the end when he defeats Phasma, he
defeats Captain Phasma, because that fight is just like a blink and you'll miss it type scenario.
Yeah, you could say that is where he definitively becomes rebel scum. That's why he says it. But that's the subject for another day. Back to this movie.
Yeah, I don't like how much they regress Bert and Travis's relationship. Like what they established at the end of Tremors 5 is so good. And it was like, oh, we have like a legit father-son good guy sidekick thing going on here. And then snap your finger at the very beginning of this movie and it's back to square one. Like they're just trying to get to know each other again. They're trying to get used to each other. It feels like a rehash. And it's really frustrating. It's really annoying. It's really, honestly, it's kind of mean-spirited. Like, why is Bert so antagonistic towards Travis this entire movie? It's really, really off-putting. Yeah, I don't like it. Con number 9 is this movie really has, in my opinion, it has a lack of focus and it doesn't have really any forward momentum. The story here is very, very basic. Graboids in the Arctic, ass splashes in the Arctic. Oh, Bert is sick. Got to use graboids to cure him and then kill graboids and ass blasters. Whoop-de-fucking-do. There's not really much of a focus and there's really no forward momentum. It just feels like a random string of events strung together piece by piece very, very, very minimally.
Well, and they also try to do some fan service, I guess you'd say, by connecting it back to Tremors 3, which was also written by the same writer again. So that may have had something with it.
Well, that's all well and good, but to me, it just feels like this movie had a lack of focus. And the last con I have, con number 10, is the Graboid Venom twist. Like, what? This literally feels like it comes out of buttfuck nowhere. Never before in the franchise did they even remotely imply that Graboids have venom sacs in their mouths. Never even remotely. Now, if they wanted to, I just thought of this, if they wanted to have another variant of Graboids, they could have had something that, like, spits out acid or spits out venom to kill people. That would have been cool, but they don't. Adding the Graboid venom bullshit feels like some kind of last-minute stupid twist to make the monsters more interesting and add more fake stakes and fake tension to the story. Literally feels like they just pulled it out of their ass and said, yep, this is gospel. No, can't do it that way.
That was your last one?
Yeah.
I think I might add another one. Because I was just thinking about it. You said that the Tremors series actually has a pretty tight continuity. I think this movie kind of messes with that a little bit because there's one point where somebody says that Bert's done this on 2 continents, but by this point you should
He's
be
done it
thinking
on 3.
He's been done on 3. He's done Africa, the last movie, South America, because Argentina is in South America in Tremors 3, and then Nevada in the United States and then Mexico are part of North America. So there you go. So again, that's like a little.
And Mexico is also in North America too.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's a little a nitpick, I guess you'd say, but I guess I'll add it to the comments.
Well, maybe that's like another carryover from Tremors 3, because Dr. Merlis mentions that he's killed graboids on 2 separate continents. So maybe he just kind of forgot about Tremors 5. But yeah, that is a minor that is like a minor it's like a little bump in the road. I wouldn't say that's a huge what's the word?
Drawback?
No, not drawback, like a muddle of the continuity. What's the word? God damn it.
Go against canon?
Flaw in the timeline. Sure, let's go with that for lack of a better term. That's all that she wrote. I guess I had 10 because I took away the bad CGI that I thought originally. But no, the CGI, it looks pretty good.
Oh, it's actually probably the best part of the movie.
Final thoughts?
Well, it's funny, guys. Even though we had such a long list of cons, probably the longest of any review we've done thus far.
Well, there was Terminator Dark Fate.
Yeah, but that got a good discussion out of us. I guess this one was too. I guess maybe I'm starting to suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. The more I expose myself to this movie, I'm starting to kind of like it. But it still has a lot of problems. Probably in my heart of hearts, I would probably still skip this. But at the same time, I'm thinking it kind of sets up 7. So I don't know. If you're a newcomer to the series, watch all of them just to see what you think. Just be prepared that this isn't great. I would probably give this a 4, maybe a 5 if I'm generous. Probably a 4, definitively. I have a feeling you're going to knock off 2 stars.
My final thoughts, as Trev says, yes, if you're a newcomer and you want to watch the whole series, obviously go right ahead. Watch Tremors 6. After that, I recommend Tremors fans skip this one. It's not a good movie. It's not well made. It's not very fun to watch. It's not fun to look at. It's just not a good movie. I really fucking hate to say that too, because Tremors is just one of my absolute favorite franchises. And this franchise is like so close to being the one series where I'm just like, there ain't a bad movie in this series, but this one just kills it. I will also definitively be giving this a 4 out of 10. Funny enough, it kind of almost reflects my pros and cons. Yeah, 4 out of 10. It's got a couple moments here and there, and there's moments where they almost try, but I really feel like there was some studio meddling involved, and there was just some people that just really didn't care, and they just got roped into doing something they didn't want to do. So a 4 out of 10. It's my least favorite Tremors movie, and it's definitely the most disappointing Tremors movie. And this is the one of the whole series I don't see myself coming back to, and I recommend that you skip.
Yeah, for sure, especially after coming off of 5.
Yeah, like I kind of compare this almost to my reaction to Mothra vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Mothra vs. Godzilla is so fucking awesome, and it's such a great movie. And then you go to Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and it seems like a night and day difference. all that being said, thank you very much to everybody who has watched our Tremors re-review series. Despite it ending on a whimper, I still very much thoroughly enjoyed this re-review series. I think they've become some of my favorite videos that I've done in the last few months. Trev certainly has helped.
Yes.
And it's just nice to gush about movies that you love.
Yes, I concur. It was a great ride, bumps and all. I'm going to have to let somebody on the interwebs know my thoughts on 7, because I don't think I need to have Nick right away redo his thoughts on the movie, since they're so
No,
fresh.
they're pretty much still the same.
Yeah, so on that note, I'm going to try and get an article out. Right now, the Fictosphere website is down, so I'm going to have to see if they can get that up again. But I'm probably going to make my article be talking about these recent 3 movies, going in depth on 7, because that's what I haven't shared my thoughts on the most for. So there's that. Oh, can I do some plugs, or do you have any other thoughts?
No, go right ahead. I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm finally getting some steam going on my YouTube channel, or trying. Because Power Rangers, most of the seasons, apparently only the first season of Mighty Morphin is still on there. Most of the Power Rangers seasons have left Netflix, so what I'm going to be doing for the rest of February is I'm going to be going over my box set, my collection of the box sets for the different seasons, because they group them in different box sets. And I figured, well, I have enough content there for each individual video for each collection. So, yeah, the rest of February is going to be about Power Rangers. So there we go.
Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think, and hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. Go check out Trevor's stuff, and look forward to next week, to the return of an old friend. And I will see you guys in the next video.